And we are. Are we?
Wait.
Are we?
And we are live.
Yep. So welcome back. This is Down to the Wire. I'm Brian Costa,
And I'm Carter Adams.
and let's just jump right into it.
Jump right into it.
All right. So last time we left off, we were talking about possible landing destinations for the running back Leonard Fournette. We were just jumping around, probably trying to think of a couple locations. What were some locations you were talking about again?
We were talking about Miami potentially.
Miami was a big one I was thinking about.
What was it? I don't remember the other ones.
I think you had there were a couple locations down in. We weren't talking about the Bucks, unfortunately, but
No, not at all.
no. So I mean, I know the Bucks were brought up, but I kind of dismissed them basically on the fact that, I just thought there were way too many running backs in that room.
And it's not too often you see a team stacking up like the Golden State Warriors.
I know.
Yeah.
I mean, the Buccaneers are going for it.
They are going for it. I mean, they have a very small timeline to win
Yep.
some stuff.
They definitely
So,
do.
I mean, I don't blame them. Certainly the smartest move.
Mhm.
But
Yeah, no. So the reason I was kind of not the biggest fan of Fournette to the Bucks is because they already have Ronald Jones and they already have LaShawn McCoy in that backfield.
yeah, they certainly have some talent back there.
Yeah.
But, Leonard Fournette's not going to hurt.
Oh no, definitely. I mean he's probably the best back now in that backfield. So I think obviously if you're trying to improve that position, like they completely succeeded with that.
Yeah.
However, I do think that it could be a situation of too many cooks because I mean you got Brady who's going to be the star of the show down there. You got Evans, you got Godwin. I mean another position they're super loaded up at is tight end where you got three of them. You got Gronk, Brate, and OJ Howard. So that's just going to be another position, and it's like, are they going to try to find a way to split the time? Are they going to do something like that? It's definitely going to be a very weird kind of year.
As much as I want to say that Tom Brady is going to run the show, unfortunately, I can't agree with you there because I think Tom Brady, he's older. I think they're getting Leonard Fournette for a reason. I think they are trying to minimize the workload that Tom Brady has to put on himself.
No, definitely. I mean, I know back in New England, the Pats went with more of a, like in Brady's later years, they kind of went with more of a power running team. And that actually really works very well for them. I mean, they won a Super Bowl with that kind of offense.
And even in the days of like Stephen Ridley too, the fumble king.
So I mean, if you actually kind of want to think about it, I mean, if you had to, in a way, I guess, if you're looking at these running backs, you could kind of compare them to Patriots running backs of old. Like you look at a guy like Leonard Fournette, and he's almost like a beefier version of say a LeGarrette Blount, where he is going to be that bull rush guy, but you can use him on more than just a couple downs and just to get that small yardage. He can be an every down back. And then you look at guys like LaShawn McCoy. He's going to be that guy that can catch the ball out of the backfield, and then Ronald Jones is basically just going to be that guy in between.
It's very similar to the weapons we saw in New England, except superstar names.
Exactly. So I mean, LaShawn McCoy, had this been 5-6 years ago, this would have been a stellar running back core. But obviously McCoy is aged at this point, so obviously he's not the player he once was, but he's still obviously a decent threat in that backfield.
Yeah, I mean, LaShawn McCoy, like you said, he's getting older. He hasn't necessarily impressed me too much, especially in fantasy, because he's always the biggest disappointment. Super inconsistent. He's either on or off.
Yeah.
But you get Tom Brady as much talent as you can, and that's how you go for it. You see it in the NBA. You see it all the time.
Yeah, no. So, I mean, right now, from what we've seen over Tom Brady's whole career, is that he's been able to take, kind of low-level guys and elevate them to be, he's taken below average players and gotten them to average players and gotten them to above average, and he's been able to turn superstars into just franchise changing players. So I think now in his older age, I mean, you kind of saw it last year where he still was able to get a little bit out of some of the younger guys, but I mean, the Jacoby Myers of the world and the Keel Harrys of the world, they really kind of struggled.
They need a Cam Newton to develop them.
That could be the step that follows it, but Brady just wasn't able to kind of gel with those guys like he is hopefully down in Tampa, where these guys will be.
I mean, he
in an
was
upper
on his
echelon.
way out too.
Yeah.
Clearly, looking back on the season.
Yeah.
And speaking of Cam Newton, I don't want to segue too much away from the topic, but Cam Newton was also named the captain.
Yeah.
On the Patriots.
No, I mean
which honestly didn't surprise me based on some of the things that Belichick was saying. All over Instagram, you see quotes. No one works harder than Cam does.
Yeah.
And that's something that you don't expect from a guy like Belichick.
Yeah, but is that
is
is that really Cam though? Like, but is that really Belichick? You think praising Cam, or do you think it's more of just like
the media blowing it up,
or is it just something that Belichick does to a lot of guys? I mean, I saw a list of people who Belichick has said that to. He said that about tight end Tim Wright in 2014. I mean, I'm a Pats fan, so I remember Tim Wright, but I mean, I could tell you that there's probably a good number of Pats fans that are just like, who? I mean, I remember him vividly. I mean, I know he was the backup tight end to Gronk, and he did great. But I mean, it's definitely a weird thing that if Belichick really and truly believes that Cam's working harder than anyone, that really says something. Because I mean, obviously his input is incredible.
And I mean, I believe that he's working harder than everyone else because he's coming into New England trying to fill Tom Brady's shoes, and he's named a captain immediately right off the bat in his first season. I think Cam Newton. I agree with Belichick. Nobody works harder than Cam Newton. He's having fun up there too. He's having so much fun. You see him dancing around at practices and stuff. He's still the same Cam, but I think he's in the right place now.
That's good. Yeah, I kind of agree with you on that. So it's definitely going to be, can Cam take the Pats weapons that Brady couldn't elevate and bring it to a new level? And what can Brady do with these weapons that for a long time in Tampa kind of had, like the Mike Evans and Godwins of the world, really didn't have too great of a quarterback, even though a lot of people look at a guy like Jameis Winston and says, you know what, he's had a rough start, but he was a 30-30 guy in the worst way possible.
Yeah, and I was seeing so many headlines about how Cam Newton had such an amazing chemistry with Mohamed Sanu.
Yeah.
And we unfortunately just released Mohamed Sanu.
Yeah, I didn't get that too much at all.
Not at all.
From what I can tell, he had a very team-friendly contract with the team.
Definitely.
So it's, unless they're trying to do some weird restructuring, because I know a lot of teams will do that where they'll end up cutting a guy, they'll get rid of because for some reason, like restructuring wouldn't do it, so sometimes you do have to cut a guy to work out the guarantees on a contract and restructure it that way. If they do it and they bring him back on, that's awesome, but really at this point in time, I think if Belichick is trying to, compete with Cam, I don't know what cutting a guy like Sanu, who like you said, has this great chemistry, I don't know what that really does.
Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, Mohamed Sanu, he didn't do too much last season. He was one of those guys. He was almost coming in like a rookie because it's not like he knew the offense or anything, and that was very clear in the plays that he did play on. But I think Cam definitely could have brought out the most in Mohamed Sanu, just like all these other young guys that Tom Brady could.
I mean, one, he could have brought out the most of them, and two, I mean, I don't know if you knew this, but I could tell Mohamed Sanu was clearly injured. I mean, he had leg problems. He wasn't himself. I mean, and Sanu, just like Cam, looked pretty healthy too going into this year. If he could have been that guy that he had been, for the Falcons and for all these other teams, then yeah, I would say have higher expectations than what he was with the Pats last year, because when he's healthy, Mohamed Sanu is a very good receiver. Maybe not the number one that the Pats were going to probably have him be as a deep threat kind of guy, but I mean he's at least a 2A kind of guy when he's healthy.
I agree.
Yeah. So also in the NFL, unfortunately, longtime Patriots kicker Steven Kostowski was on the free agent market for a while, but he is finally heading to the Tennessee Titans.
Finally heading out. I mean, I can't even think of replacing him.
Yeah, it's definitely going to be weird. I mean, right now the QB competition, I believe, is between a veteran Nick Folk. He's kicked with the Jets. He kicked with the Pats last year, among other teams. And it's also between rookie Justin Rohrwasser. I don't know if you know about him too much, but he actually was pretty good at Marshall. But that's probably one of the storylines that really isn't being covered going into camp.
Yeah, I mean, Steven Gostkowski, just like Tom Brady, he's a vet on the Pats. There's going to be some big shoes to fill. He's hit a lot of clutch field goals when he needs to. The kicking position in New England scared me a lot last season. It was a big weakness.
Yeah, I mean, it was.
I just hope Belichick knows more than we do.
Yeah, I mean the kicking position last year was ugly. I mean it was Steven Gostkowski who was hurt, then Kai Forbath, Mike Nugent, Nick Folk. I mean no one knew who was really going to be out there for the Pats because it was just a different guy every week. And I mean Steven Gostkowski, like Adam Vinatieri, had an illustrious career as a New England Patriot. Was fantastic when healthy. And really, up until that missed extra point against Denver in the 2015 AFC Championship game, was probably
He had never really hit a breaking point.
He had really never hit a breaking point, and besides Justin Tucker, there was really no one challenging him as the best kicker in the league.
That's true. Yeah.
So I mean, definitely props to Steven Gostkowski on an amazing Patriots career. If he can revive it in Tennessee, I mean that'd be great. Even after that 2015 game, one of the moments that I still remember from his career most is when he hit that amazing clutch field goal in Super Bowl 53.
Oh yeah.
I mean, a lot of Pats fans were really nervous because, after that 2015 missed extra point, a lot of doubts started to creep in, and Gostkowski started to miss field goals that he never really missed.
And he
before.
was definitely, looking back on last season and even the season of Super Bowl 53.
Yeah.
He was showing the signs that he was on his way out, and honestly, there's no better spot for him than Tennessee, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, he's going to be with a Patriots guy, Mike Vrabel, but even though he's going to be with a Patriots guy, it's not going to be. I mean, Vrabel kind of runs a team in his own way. He isn't like a Bill O'Brien or like these other guys who kind of take Belichick's mantra and then makes it part of their team. Mike Vrabel is really his own kind of coach.
And that means that he's learned the most from Belichick because he's able to take his own ideas and do it just as well as Belichick does, but it's not the same.
Yeah. I mean, that's probably why he's probably more successful than any of the other proteges.
Yeah.
I mean, you could argue Bill O'Brien, but Bill O'Brien has been making some very questionable moves. You look at DeAndre Hopkins, a lot of those,
Deshaun Watson doesn't have the best relationship with the guy.
Yeah.
How long before he's on his way out?
Definitely. I mean, for a long time, O'Brien was considered you could argue it was when McDaniels wasn't under Belichick's tenure and when he had gone to Denver and the Rams and all that stuff. You could make an argument that it was McDaniels who was basically was kind of like the student of the professor. But when he came back, it was like, oh, Bill O'Brien is that guy. He's taken everything Belichick's learned. He's slowly built up a team and he's competing. But then he kind of makes these moves where you're like, I don't really know about this guy.
Exactly.
So he's definitely kind of a interesting guy, and you don't know. Yeah, I would say for sure. Also in the NFL, besides the groundbreaking move of Leonard Fournette to the Buccaneers and Steven Gostkowski,
Leonard Fournette to the
south.
Golden State Buccaneers.
Pretty much at this point, they're just loading up. They're really just gonna be going for it because but after this, it's going to. I mean, you're talking about a collapse. This will be a historic collapse if they lose all these guys afterwards.
They better hope they get something out.
You have to get a championship. At this point, it's either championship or you completely just tank your franchise for at least the next decade. I believe. And finally, in the NFL, a story that we had was Josh Gordon is. I guess he's off reinstatement now for the th time.
Yeah.
I mean, he has. Props to the guy for being able to, kind of be able to negotiate with Roger Goodell and all that stuff. But it's crazy. But the news that was breaking is that he's finally going back to the Seattle Seahawks,
which makes me thrilled. Not just for him as a player, but for him as a person. Because last week we were talking about how this guy was potentially auctioning off his Super Bowl ring or selling it. That made me think that maybe he needed that money. Yeah,
I mean, definitely. It seemed like there were talks that there were also talks that was potentially fake. But even not, it kind of was worrisome to think that he was getting that desperate as a person. I mean, thank God he has a job that he can fall back on now with the Seattle Seahawks.
Good for him. I mean, nobody deserves it more than him. He's a great player. And Seattle's a great spot for him. They're known for kind of taking those guys in, just like New England, and fixing them up.
I mean, Pete Carroll kind of does it in his own way though, where he will kind of take that player kind of
polar opposites
energy
with the Patriots.
Yeah, it's very similar where he'll take those guys in, but Pete Carroll will kind of take those personalities and he'll let that kind of run the team in that own kind of way.
Exactly.
Belichick will take it in. He might have a little personality to an extent, but as soon as it starts to hurt the team, he will quash it.
Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of the difference I see with them. But not only is it a good thing for Josh Gordon, but it is a great thing for Russell Wilson.
Definitely. I mean, you give the guy another weapon, it's never going to hurt. And especially with Greg Olsen in Seattle now, even if he's not running routes, it's still one more guy in the end blocking for him.
Exactly. So, I mean, you're going to have Josh Gordon, Tyler Lockett, DK Metcalf, and just And I mean,
an unbelievable roster.
Yeah, I mean, at the running backs, they still got Carson, and then do they have anyone else, or am I just trying to think?
I can't put my finger on. They had one more breakout player last season that I can't remember his name.
Well, if I think about it, I'll say it. But I mean, maybe Rashad Penny could have been.
Oh, Rashad Penny.
It could have been him.
Yep.
And then all right, so that's basically kind of the mostly of what's going on in the NFL right now. Let's shift over to NBA, and we were kind of talking before we actually went off. The game was that night. It was Rockets Thunder. Game 7. Chris Paul had battled back and he was looking strong going into the final minutes of that game. But unfortunately, the pass over to Lou Dort got blocked by James Harden, and it was history for them. And I really hate to say it, but I'm very mad that the Rockets won that game.
I definitely wasn't thrilled.
Yeah,
I wasn't thrilled.
Definitely.
Nothing. This is my opinion, but nothing would have made me happier than to see James Harden go down once again in the playoffs a round earlier than he always does.
Yeah. That, and especially just to see the Rockets, trade away the guy that they thought was that center of toxicity, only to have him come and beat them and beat the duo that they thought was going to be like the two buddies that was going to change the game for them. To have seen that would have been really special. I mean, Harden didn't play great offensively anyways, but he did have the block to really change the game in that course, so I'll give him that.
Yeah, he did have the game-winning play. I mean, watching it was just unbelievable basketball IQ from James Harden, and I guess that's why he's up there in the MVP race every single season.
Yeah, I mean, I gotta say it though. There was a possession along. I think it was within the final 5 or 2 minutes of that game. It was some of the sloppiest basketball
Definitely.
I had ever seen.
I know exactly what you're talking about. There's guys hitting the floor. There's guys tipping the ball everywhere.
There were guys doing fake flops.
Yep.
It was some of the ugliest basketball I've ever seen.
Three attempted taking a charge 3 times.
It was
maybe.
So bad. I can't even describe how bad it was. If you guys go back and watch the last 5 to 2 minutes of that game, you'll see a sequence where it takes places on all sides of the court. One guy's trying to take a charge, and another guy is. People are diving all over the ground. I don't think a single basket was made either, though. So to make it worse. So
Definitely.
And that was before Dort and all that stuff too. So it was just a very ugly scene for them.
Yeah, it wasn't the greatest basketball ever.
But then you did see great basketball IQ by Harden on that block. Another player who we'd like to talk about who didn't get that block was Jaylen Brown against the Toronto Raptors.
Oh man! Don't even get me started. Our first playoff loss this season.
Yeah, I mean, we were riding really high. I mean, I don't know. Yeah, so I mean, I know we just transitioned real quick from Rockets Thunder to Celtics Raptors, but I cannot express the amount of frustration I have for Jaylen Brown. I mean, Jaylen Brown is a very smart and a really great player. I just don't know what he was thinking.
I mean, it happens. It happens. I didn't really care as much as you'd expect a Celtics fan to care, because if the Raptors have to beat us on a buzzer beater, that's honestly a good sign. We're up 2-1. Our odds are looking very good at this point.
Yeah,
it's not the end of the world.
But I mean, here's the thing, the Celtics now need to come out gunning, because I mean, the Raptors basically. I know it's only one game, but when you have such an emphatic buzzer beater like that, where you just completely demoralize the other team, you can almost count it as another kind of half a game.
It's how they're going to gain momentum.
So if the Celtics come out sloppy, you better bet the Raptors are going to come out firing.
Because they are still a great team.
The Raptors are great. Pascal Siakam has taken an amazing step. I mean, but you need to make sure that the Celtics are on their A game when they come out, and I think that they're going to be fired up from that blown coverage, and I think they will end up hopefully sealing the deal in the next game.
I hope so. I can hope for nothing less.
So do you think how many games do you think the series is going to go?
5.
You're still thinking 5?
I'm still thinking 5. I think game 3 was a fluke. I mean, it was still a very close game, obviously, because it had to end on a buzzer beater, but that play from Jaylen Brown, it's a fluke thing. That's not who he is.
Yeah.
They've proved it by winning the last 6 of their playoff games. That's it.
Yeah. So, I mean, I personally, right now, I think it's going to go 6. Depending on how tomorrow goes, I could honestly agree with you. I just think that, the Raptors are a good team, and I think that they will win tomorrow, but the way that they win will probably depend a lot on how I feel. If they just completely just bulldoze them and it continues, then I'll probably say 5. But if they have to really squeak out a win and it's almost kind of an ugly win, then I think that the Raptors probably win the game that the Celtics would have to clinch, and I think that it would probably go 6, but I still got the Celtics.
Brad Stevens, if you can hear this right now, please go up 3-1 if this series is going to go 6 games. You're going to save my heart a lot of beats.
Please just go up 3-1. Yep. It'll do us so much better. Also, so I mean, it's very tough. So do you mean? So I mean, OG is. I mean, he really killed it for them though.
I mean, who else is going to hit that shot on that team?
Kyle Lowry.
I guess you're right. But still.
Yeah. So let's not. I mean, yeah. So it's definitely going to be very weird. Let's take a little transition from the bubble and let's go to a team that is no longer in it but made a very impactful move for the future of their franchise. The Brooklyn Nets really kind of went out of left field and hired Hall of Fame point guard Steve Nash to be their next head coach. What are your thoughts?
Steve Nash, he has no coaching experience.
Yeah.
You have KD and Kyrie. It's either going to work because you have so many big names, not just on the team, but now coaching the team. It's either going to work or it's going to be an absolute disaster.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely is going to be a one of two kind of situation. I'm looking at it more as, Steve Nash is going to kind of be what Steve Kerr is to the Golden State Warriors and kind of what Ty Lue was to LeBron when he was on those finals teams. I don't think he's going to be the type of guy that's going to push a lot of buttons. I mean, the report was that KD and Kyrie were the people who were clamoring for this guy and really wanted him. So I think that I personally think that if they want him, I think Steve Nash probably will kind of do whatever role they want him to be in because they clamored for him so hard. I think that like a Ty Lue, like a Steve Kerr, like he might kind of he'll have ideas for how he wants the offense to run because I mean he's an amazing mind for the game. But I do think that KD and Kyrie will kind of dictate the offense more than a lot of people think that Steve Kerr will.
If I'm a Nets fan, I can only hope that KD and Kyrie don't have any sort of beef because it's Kyrie, it's KD, there's beef bound to happen.
Yeah, I mean it's too insanely
and I think honestly,
just clashing personalities.
If the Nets are going to be the Nets will be a playoff contending team next season.
I mean they already were this year, and
they will be. Adding KD and Kyrie to the roster, you obviously can't go downhill from where you were this season.
Yeah.
But all I can hope is that there's no beef because that would tear it apart. And I think honestly, I'd rather have the team that they had this season than beef between KD and Kyrie.
Yeah, I mean definitely, I agree with you. One of the things that I do agree with is just the idea that. I mean, we were talking about Steve Kerr, and if the Nets, if their organization, if it's squeaky clean, nothing is really going wrong with them, then I see Steve Kerr really being probably a solid addition. I mean, I can't predict anything now.
Steve Nash.
Oh, Steve Nash, my apologies.
No, you're good.
Yeah, so Steve Nash, I see him probably being. I could see him being a good players coach kind of deal, but then again, it could blow up. But that's saying if it's squeaky clean. If KD and Kyrie are having a beef, I don't think Steve Nash is going to have that voice where he can step up and say enough is enough. So, KD and Kyrie will need to kind of be on their best behavior and realize, hey, if we want to do this, we kind of have to put all differences aside and go for it.
Because then Steve Nash does potentially turn into a Steve Kerr, where his team isn't really being coached; it's being coached by the players.
Definitely. I mean, I completely agree with that. And two, you look at the Golden State Warriors from when KD left, and there was a lot of. I'll tell you, Kerr handled it well because I mean there seemed that there was a lot of turmoil going in. KD seemed very very angry that he wasn't being treated as the star number one and Curry was, but that was Curry's town, so a lot of people were going to give him a lot more respect.
He was the main source of talent on that team before KD even came in.
I mean, you can argue KD is the better player, but Curry is just going to be the hometown kid because that's where he was drafted.
Exactly.
That's where he got.
And rightfully so from Steve Kerr's perspective. I mean, I would do the same thing.
Yeah. So I mean, if anything happens like that in Brooklyn, I mean, Kyrie when he signed with Brooklyn, kind of like came out and was like, you know what, I was a Brooklyn kid. I kind of grew up a Nets fan. I was like posting pictures of him in a Nets shirt. If he ends up doing that, and KD is a better player than him, if he tries to do that and be like, oh, I'm the hometown kid and all that stuff. One, I don't think the fan base is going to go with that, and two, I think that will really make Kevin Durant mad because he just left a situation where that happened.
Definitely, but it's Kyrie. You never know. I have to ask you. So this year, obviously, top 4 in the East. You have a very strong Milwaukee team, very strong Toronto team at 2, Celtics are 3, and Miami Heat at 4. If you do think that the Brooklyn Nets are going to be seeded in that top 4 for the playoffs next year, where will they be seeded?
So, I mean, that's also going to depend on where the other teams go. If you take a healthy KD and Kyrie team, I think they could either usurp the Celtics, but they're at least usurping the Heat. I mean, Jimmy Butler has been the perfect player for that Miami team. I mean, he plays hard. His stats don't. I mean, the way he plays the game, they don't show up in the stat book all the time. But I mean, the guy is just a dirt dog down there, and that guy just goes at it.
It's definitely the best fit for the guy.
Oh,
for sure.
Oh, absolutely.
I saw a quote, I think, not too long ago, of Jimmy Butler saying that he told his teammates he wasn't gonna pass and take a few shots, and they were fine with it. It makes you think that all the beef that happened in Minnesota, and it makes you almost think that Jimmy Butler wasn't being given the credit that he deserved, because he seems like the most down to earth player. Even in the interviews and everything, he seems like the most down-to-earth guy in Miami. Yeah, you could just tell it's a better fit for him.
Yeah, I mean, it's surprising that a guy in he would kind of Miami as like for the cultural aspect of it, and Miami could just kind of be like a lively city and all that stuff. It's surprising he would be able to thrive there. But I mean, you look at, I think that he would have been an amazing player to watch in the '90s because I mean. Back in the '90s, a lot of guys.
He's scrappy.
He's raw, and he was just like. And the social aspect of the game, it was emerging, but it wasn't like teams were always like being super friendly with guys on the other team like they are now.
Definitely.
I think that he would have been one of those guys in the '90s that a lot of people would have been like, he's just one of those guys, and I mean he's just gonna be like straight up basketball 24/7.
Like he said, the bubble is a business trip for him.
Absolutely, yeah. So, but I do think even with his impact and being a great player down there, I do think that KD and Kyrie, just the tandem of them two, if they end up gelling well, they're at least going to get past them. If the Celtics end up tripping up and having some faults, I think that because Brooklyn is bigger, I think they could hurt him there. But it's really just going to depend how the Celtics do across the schedule next year, depending on who improves, who goes downhill. Is Kemba going to be the same guy next year? I mean, he's in his 30s now.
Yeah.
So a lot of things are going to depend on that.
I mean, I can only hope that a Kevin Durant in the Eastern Conference will not be toxic for every other team, because right now the East it's very top heavy.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's a lot of like really super powerful teams, and then it's just basement dwellers.
Definitely. So
you got to hope that the rest of the East isn't just swamped by a KD Kyrie team, but it's definitely going to be an interesting story to watch.
And I'm going to have to agree with you though. I think if the Nets do get seeded in the top half of the Eastern Conference playoffs, I think they're only surpassing Miami.
Yeah,
I don't think.
At least this first year. At least this first year. I mean,
I also think they're going to have a slow start. I think they're going to have a lot of kinks to work out.
It'll kind of be similar to the big three that happened down in Miami, where they made it to the finals, but they ended up losing to that Dirk Nowitzki team just because they didn't have that year of gelling, and then they won those 2 in a row, and then they lost to the Spurs that next year. But it did take them a year to kind of like work out all the kinks and get to that point.
Definitely. Oh, speaking of Dirk, I just have to give him credit because nobody remembers that he had to go through Kobe and LeBron to win that final.
Yeah.
So Dirk, great player.
Props to him. Let's shift over to baseball now. So one of the stories in baseball that isn't being talked about too much is that I was reading an article on ESPN, and basically Rob Manfred, who has made wrong decision after wrong decision for his organization and sport. Apparently, there are reports that he is basically going to downsize minor league baseball because he isn't wanting to pay some of the players for overtime and other charges. So basically, the reports are that there will for each MLB team there will only be 4 affiliates. So it'll be like like single A, double A, triple A, and then like another kind of farm team before you get to the major leagues. So there's a chance that a lot of teams are going to lose funding, and that that's going to and they're just either going to have to go out of business or they're going to have to become independent leagues.
So I have a question. What is it right now? Can the teams have as many affiliates as they want?
I don't know if it's as many affiliates, but they can have. But I think there's at least over 100 or so teams that would be losing partnership with the MLB. The other difference is that MILB, minor league baseball, is able to work with like privately out of its own kind of like organization. I believe down in St. Petersburg, Florida. If this deal goes through, which I believe it already has, they will actually be moved up to New York just to work as like kind of in like a sub office of the MLB headquarters, and they'll kind of be put aside. And additionally, like all minor league baseball marketing will just be kind of done through MLB, and basically minor league baseball as an organization will just become like kind of just like a department of Major League Baseball.
Okay, so not the greatest move.
No, so basically. I know you're not the biggest baseball guy, but
I'm not afraid to admit it.
Yeah. So, but from my personal intel, it is not a good move for Major League Baseball. I mean, I don't know how. I mean, minor league baseball players really don't make that much money, so I think that Manfred is being extremely cheap by not.
I've heard horror stories of how they have to live.
Yeah, I mean, they definitely live extremely cheap. Mm-hmm. So I don't know why Manfred isn't willing to pony up the money, especially for the horrid conditions in which they live. I mean. From what I believe, it wasn't a deal of them asking for better conditions that led to this. It's just that the fact that Manfred doesn't want to pay the money, even though they're basically living on buses, and they basically rely on team catered meals throughout an entire season to feed them.
And even last week we were talking about how the MLB just can't market players to save their lives.
Absolutely.
And by cutting off the way that new players and young talent are propelled into the major leagues, I think that's obviously a bad move on baseball's part.
And additionally to that, Manfred's whole thing has been growing the game and getting kids in like the inner city and just around the USA and the world to kind of like flock to baseball and become big into baseball. But if there's some team out in like I don't know, Blanksville, like Tennessee, if their doors end up shutting because baseball doesn't want to play the team, that's an outlet that Manfred loses, and that's an outlet that Major League Baseball no longer has to promote the sport, because even though it's not Major League Baseball, it's baseball. People are going to assume MLB with baseball. As soon as you take that outlet away, it's no longer a way that you can attract young fans to the game and get more people involved with your game. I don't see where Major League Baseball sees this as a positive. It's more of just a slight towards minor league baseball.
They're going in the wrong direction.
They're completely going in the wrong direction. I've been saying that. The owners are at this point are just too afraid to kick Manfred out, because he's basically just keeping their pockets safe.
Yeah.
And the fan experience needs to be put first, Manfred. I mean, the way he has treated the fans of Major League Baseball has been atrocious. I mean, you can make arguments about what Goodell has done, and you can say that the way he handled domestic violence was atrocious. I mean, you look at guys like Ray Rice, Greg Hardy, and among others, and he completely botched that.
Definitely.
I mean, he did awful with that.
But none of those decisions compare to things that will hurt the game.
Yeah, I mean, definitely. Like you look at domestic violence and all that stuff, and people were like, "Wow, this is a big detractor. There seemed to be a problem with it in the NFL." But at the end, but the good thing is that the NFL. What was bad about it is that the NFL kind of was just able to make it go away. I mean, you could say that's good for marketing reasons, but another thing that NFL is good at is being able to market more than just one guy.
Exactly.
They can market a cornerback on the Seahawks. They can market all these different guys, so they can they are better at growing their game than MLB is completely.
Definitely.
So that is one area of NFL that I will say Goodell. I mean, I don't know if he's completely responsible for it, but NFL has gotten that right. MLB baseball has completely botched it.
And on top of that, their commissioner is making the same type of wrong decisions that Goodell makes.
Yeah.
Not only to hurt the game,
but he's also
with what I mean.
There are also similar like instances of domestic violence, I believe, with Addison Russell of the Cubs. among other players. There are just tons of other players that, Aroldis Chapman, the pitcher for the Yankees, there was an instance of him punching his fiance. I don't know if his fiance or his girlfriend, but I remember there were instances of that happening. But a lot of this stuff just isn't talked about because Major League Baseball just doesn't know how to handle it.
And the cherry on top, the Astros cheating scandal.
Absolutely. I mean, Major League Baseball is just they're basically their book of just all the things they've done wrong. Sometimes I forget about the Astros cheating scandal, even though it's one of the biggest ones of the past couple decades. So I don't know. I mean, yeah, I completely slipped my mind for a second.
In baseball, they're clearly just in their Great Depression right now. It's like nothing's gonna change until you get rid of the top guy and you have someone come in and start making new, fresh decisions in the mind of the young player who aspires to be a baseball player.
I mean, a regime change is evident. They 100% need a regime change. They need a guy in there who is going. I remember there was a movement back in the day. I mean, there are some MLB baseball players that really were hoping that Adam Silver would, leave the NBA and, take over MLB and just revive it. If anyone could revive the MLB, it would be him. Obviously, I don't think he would ever leave the NBA. I think he's
never. He's put the NBA in such a good spot.
It is such a cushy job for him at this point. I see no reason why he would ever try to leave it. But, I don't know who's going to take the job. MLB does need a guy, though, and it's so apparent that they just need so much help.
Someone.
It needs to be a complete overhaul. And so the next story we have from MLB is that, pitching legend, pitched for the Mets, Cincinnati Reds, among other teams, Tom Seaver unfortunately passed away from complications of dementia and COVID-19 at the age of 75. Seaver was the 1967 Rookie of the Year. He was a World Series champion on the 1969 Miracle Mets, a 12-time All-Star and 3-time Cy Young Award winner. Arguably one of the best pitchers Major League Baseball has ever seen. I saw Vin Scully, the world famous announcer for the Los Angeles Dodgers for many years, said that Seaver was the best pitcher that he said he ever saw. At least as a righty. I mean, I know he saw Koufax, but at least as a righty, he said he was one of the best arms he ever saw. Definitely a devastating loss for Major League Baseball. It's a very sad loss.
On top of everything else, yes.
Yeah, on top of COVID and everything else going on in the world, it's a very sad loss to see a great pitcher like Seaver kind of unfortunately pass away. Yeah, I mean, I know the Mets. One of the ways the Mets did honor Seaver is that. Because his pitching style was so unique, his right knee actually would end up touching the dirt on the mound when he delivered the ball, because that's how low he got. So to honor that, the Mets actually did put dirt on the right knee of all their pants to kind of honor that tradition that Seaver kind of carried.
It's awesome.
Yeah, so that was kind of a very good, nice, feel good moment for baseball. Rest in peace to Tom Seaver. One of the all-time GOATs, a great pitcher, lost. I mean, 75 was a great year, but dementia, very, very, very sad disease for anyone to come down with. COVID-19 still a very serious pandemic, but it's unfortunate that it had to, and complications with dementia, it had to take the life of a really influential and just a very great pitcher. And finally, in Major League Baseball, suspensions for a Rays-Yankees skirmish that happened a couple days ago. The results for that were finally handed out. So, like we mentioned, Aroldis Chapman earlier, we mentioned him for completely different reasons, but Yankees flamethrower Aroldis Chapman has received a 3-game suspension, while the managers for both teams, Kevin Cash and Aaron Boone, have received a 1-game suspension. I don't know if you saw videos of the skirmish.
No, I didn't.
But basically, what happened is there was a batter for the Tampa Bay Rays. It was in the 9th inning, 2 outs left, and Chapman. You don't know if it was intentional or what the meaning was behind it, but Chapman ended up throwing a 101-mile-per-hour fastball at the guy's head. The guy luckily ducked out of the way just in time, only to strike out a few pitches later. But, on the way back, Chapman stared down the guy. Chapman stared down this individual. The batter stared Chapman back. It looks like they were going back to the dugouts and reminding their own business. But eventually, tensions began to flare, and the two sides just completely met the two sides completely just cleared the dugouts. Luckily, there were no fights. There wasn't a fight, but social distancing protocols were definitely broken in that process. So Major League Baseball here is
in a sport where it's so easy to follow them too.
Yeah, I mean, besides the fighting and all that stuff, it's a fairly decent sport where this baseball is almost a sport made for COVID, but it's really unfortunate that this event had to happen. I mean, I don't think Chapman should be throwing fastballs at guys' heads, but I mean, in this day and age, these guys just need to know. Listen, I mean, you guys can have your beef with people, but if you end up getting too close to guys, MLB is going to have to suspend people. I mean, you don't have to like it at all. I certainly am not the biggest fan of it, but it's just what MLB is going to have to do to kind of say that, oh, we're operating in a safe environment for baseball, even though you've had multiple teams have outbreaks of this virus.
Yeah.
So it's basically MLB just kind of covering their tracks for this, but we'll have to see what ends up happening down the line. If there is any retaliation or anything that happens, we'll have to end up seeing. So that basically ends up covering baseball. And I guess for this final segment before we end up going down to the wire in a little bit, there's a story out of the University of Oklahoma that for their home opening game they will be basically using because there won't be fans in the stands and it will just be just the players in an empty stadium. There are reports that basically the University of Oklahoma is going to be doing pay-per-view games, at least for their home opener, basically to make up for lost revenue and ticket sales. What are your thoughts on this?
Well, my initial thought was how much revenue does the NCAA really take in from televising games in the first place?
Yeah.
And my second concern was how does pay-per-view make you grow the amount of viewers?
Yeah,
watching the games.
I mean, it's definitely just relying on the idea that these football fans are just going to be really dedicated, and because
which I'm sure out there they probably are, and there will probably be a large number of people that will pay for the game.
And they're just like, oh, how much is the game? $3,000? Okay.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, we'll pay for it.
Take my money.
It's worth it to see my Sooners.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter because they're willing to pay for it because that's how diehard college football is out there. It is everything. It is everything to those people out there. So I mean, if they're just trying to get a quick buck, especially in this pandemic, I don't like it. I think that they have enough money already, and I think that they can cover themselves for a year of this revenue loss. I don't want to see this become a norm because I think that would be a huge detraction from the game.
But honestly, when it's being brought up that the NCAA is potentially going to be starting pay-per-view games, that does look very good for the XFL.
Yeah?
Yeah.
You think so? Because
I think it does.
Yeah.
It's one step closer to having the XFL being a separate, different, new segue into pro football.
Yeah. Similar to I completely agree. If the XFL is able to take these younger players and put them through a development that is different from college, I think that would I think that's a plus.
You look at LaMelo Ball in the NBA.
Yeah.
He hasn't played in college basketball. He's doing it a completely different way, and not even just LaMelo Ball. Some of these other international
RJ
players.
Hampton.
You get some experience playing pro overseas, except for football, potentially you can get your experience playing pro in the XFL, potentially segue into the NFL.
Yeah.
Instead of keeping this norm of, oh, you graduate high school, you go play for a college.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be like that.
What if Clemson's football season does end up going under, and Trevor Lawrence is looking for a team to play with, and the XFL opens their doors?
I think they're gonna have to put some no helmet to helmet contact restrictions.
Just a 1-year deal. It would
be
great.
Outstanding for the XFL if something like that. Yeah. If they could pull a player like Trevor Lawrence for a year.
But they're gonna have to establish just some Trevor Lawrence rules. It is 2-hand touch for this guy.
Yeah.
You are not touching this guy because if we're responsible for ruining his career, we will go down the tank.
And you see The Rock. He has $7 framed above all those XFL helmets. Because that's how much money he had in his pocket when he was cut from the CFL. and there's no better guy to be running your league. But yeah, pay-per-view college football games, I'm not the biggest fan.
Me neither. I think that they have enough money already, and I mean,
it's not boxing.
It's
not boxing.
They're also not paying the players.
You can flip the channel and get the NFL for free.
Yeah, I mean, you're not. I mean, if they end up doing that for college football, I mean, college football is kind of like one of. I mean, people talk about the NFL, but college football is kind of a lifeblood of just American tradition. If you do that, then you're really going to be hurting that, in my opinion.
Definitely, and just not having a season in the first place.
Yeah.
Also,
I mean, obviously we hope that they have a season. It's definitely going to be tough. I mean, just with everything going on, but you know.
I know the Big Ten isn't, right?
Yeah. I know the SEC is trying. I know the SEC is trying.
I'm pretty sure I saw that the Big Ten chancellors voted in favor of not having a season this year.
Okay, yeah. So it's definitely going to be a very weird, you know, I hope that pay-per-view games don't become the norm for football or any other sport besides boxing. I'm not even the biggest fan for boxing and MMA having it, but it's just how it's just how their product works, basically.
What kind of pressure does this put on the players in the combine?
In the combine, I mean,
you don't have an entire last season to play for your college, be scouted by NFL teams. You don't have that potentially.
Yeah. So I mean, you look at a guy. This is a little off topic, but I'll kind of segue it back. And I'll tell you why. I mean, Cam Newton, like throughout his free agency, was posting a lot of videos showing him working out, showing him practicing, and was like really, and you know, he looked really impressive in these clips. So I think the social media presence of these players is going to be more influential than it ever has been.
Just another way that social media is going to work its way into our lives.
It's going to be you know, the influence. It's going to be, you know, just highlight tape after highlight tape of these guys just working, putting the work in the weight room. They might be posting like what their new, you know, max like squat is. They might be doing all that stuff just to, you know, keep the eyes on the scouts. And then when they hit that combine, they do have to hit it with a stride because there won't be game film from them for at least a year.
Exactly.
So
you're not having that entire last season, so you got to put in your all at the combine. Yeah. And if you don't, that's potentially career ending.
Yeah, it at least would be career altering. I mean, it definitely is an immense pressure. You need to just be ready. So I completely agree with you. It's definitely. I mean, do you think that? I hope, like we were saying, we hope that other NCAA teams do not do this. But do you think that more might try this?
The pay-per-view you're talking about?
Yeah.
I mean,
or do you think this might just be a one-off thing that Oklahoma's just trying, and you know
I hope it's just a one-off thing that teams like Oklahoma are just trying.
Yeah.
But I think if we do see it from other teams, we're gonna see it more in like the Big 12.
Yeah.
With like teams in the Big 12 like Oklahoma, because that's where the heart of college football is in the U.S. That's where there's not a lot of NFL teams. That's where people will pay for the games. So, I mean, I wouldn't be surprised.
Yeah, I hope that, like you, I hope that it doesn't become a norm. But at the same time, I mean, money talks.
Yeah.
So it's definitely going to be what determines.
And that's not taking anything away from the SEC, but there are NFL teams.
Yeah.
Down there. There's no NFL team in Utah.
Yeah.
There's no NFL team in Oklahoma. So those are places where you can't just flip the channel and have that same access and enthusiasm about pro football as you do it like with college football.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So we have a little bit of time left, but you know, let's just talk about some predictions for, you know, since we're still on football, let's actually end up going back to the NFL before we go down to the wire.
Okay.
You know, Cam Newton, new system for the Patriots. What are your predictions for you know, wins, and you know, how do you think that it's going to be an upgrade over Brady, or do you think that, you know, Belichick is going to have one of his first ever slip ups that, you know, struggling with this new dynamic quarterback?
So you can't really, you can hope to upgrade from Brady, but you can really only upgrade from Brady last season.
Yeah.
You can upgrade from last season's Brady.
Yeah, no, you can't upgrade.
I think Cam Newton
can't upgrade
huge upgrade from last season's Brady, and I think he will prove that. But until the guy wins 6 more Super Bowls in New England, he's not going to be an upgrade from Tom Brady.
Yeah. So I mean, definitely in that position, yeah. So I think that you know, obviously I've been the biggest Brady guy forever. I think that Cam might be, for what this system is in New England right now, with being a run-heavy offense, having very few offensive weapons. It's kind of going to be similar to what he had in Carolina because you had McCaffrey and really that was it.
Yep.
So I think that Cam might be the type of guy that could make this offense work for the Patriots better than Brady. Brady obviously is able to usually work pretty well with any offense, but Brady is kind of the guy who really works well when he can pass the ball.
I'm predicting 11-5.
You're thinking 11-5?
11-5.
I'm gonna say I might go 10-6.
10-6.
I'm gonna say it's gonna take some hiccups. Belichick might. Who knows? The Pats always, there's a lot of times where you think the Pats are gonna come running out the gates, but then in December is when they really turn it on. I think something like that might end up happening with the Pats, where the first couple games there might be some hiccups. So I definitely say look for that.
I think Buffalo takes the AFC East this year.
Yep.
And I think there's going to be a battle between Miami and New England for that wild card spot in the AFC.
You think New England's got it?
But I think New England's got it still.
Is that mostly just on the fact that Tua is a rookie and there's still talk that he may not play yet?
Exactly. That's the only spot that's really missing in Miami.
Yeah, definitely. And the final one before we end up going down to the wire, Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Loaded super team. Do you think this locks up at least the division for them and makes them Super Bowl favorites?
The NFC South is such a tough division. You have New Orleans down there.
Yep.
You have
Falcons.
You have Atlanta, and
you have Teddy Bridgewater over in Carolina. A lot of people are going to discount Carolina because they seem to be rebuilding right now.
I'm gonna discount Carolina this year.
Look out for Matt Rule to I don't think they're going to be playing for much, but look for them to play spoiler if Matt Rule can get that program running.
And ultimately, it's going to come down to New Orleans and Tampa Bay.
Oh yeah, no, definitely.
And whichever team doesn't win the division will be a wild card team.
Yeah,
no doubt.
Yeah. So your predictions for the for not the New England Patriots, but for the
Buccaneers,
now led by former New England Patriots quarterback Tom Brady. What are your predictions?
So we have 2 solid years with the Buccaneers. Year 1, 12-4.
12-4.
Year 2, this is bold. 15-1.
Really?
15-1.
You think so?
That team's gonna break
44-year-old Tom Brady is having a 15-1 record.
Yep.
Wow. That is definitely bold.
That is a take, but it is a take that will prove to be true after kinks are worked out.
I don't know about that. You're really gonna
15-1. I didn't say they were in a Super Bowl though.
Oh, I'm not. I know you didn't. But 15-1 and 15-1 with a 44-year-old quarterback, that is definitely saying something, especially for the fact that the
that's
Pats
out there. But
especially saying for the fact that the Pats were 12-4 and 11-5, and I don't think the Pats haven't had 15 wins since 07.
When's the last 15-1?
Carolina in 2015. Yep. Yeah. That's definitely a bold prediction. I think that first year, like you said, there might be some kinks to work out, but I think
that roster.
Yeah, but at the same time, I don't know how many kinks are really going to have to be worked out when you have a super team like that.
Exactly.
So definitely a very interesting idea, but it's going to be a very interesting season for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and the New England Patriots. Patriots fans, Buccaneers fans are going to have some of the most unique seasons that they've had in Buccaneers have high hopes for at least the first time since 2002 when they won it.
Yep.
And the Patriots are going to be looking at a very interesting season. Will the dynasty continue in some form, or is the Patriots heading in a new direction?
Losing is a novelty. It's something that I think I've talked about this on the show before. Losing is something that us Patriots fans don't get to experience that often. And honestly, give us a few losses this season, Cam Newton is still bringing this team into a very good spot.
All right. So I think it's time.
I think we're down to the wire.
Yep. It is now 7:54. We are 6 minutes out from 8 o'clock. We are officially down to the wire, which means we are going to go over all the stuff we talked about in this show in basically a speed round, kind of just giving you the lowdown in case you joined at a later time, and just go through with some last minute thoughts before we're off for the hour.
So we kick things off with the NFL. Obviously, a groundbreaking move.
Yeah.
When Leonard Fournette signs with Tampa Bay Buccaneers.
basically minutes after our show ended.
Definitely.
So that's definitely a groundbreaking move over there in the NFL. This is probably, I mean, this could be the move that ends up putting them over the top.
Mm-hmm.
Steven Gostowski, longtime Patriots kicker, great career with the Patriots. Heading to the Tennessee Titans, going to see what else he can get in his career there. Similar to an Adam Vinatieri, was a very great kicker for the Patriots for a very long time.
Yep.
Respect out to Steven Gostowski. Best of luck to him over in Tennessee. Let's see what he can do down in Tennessee.
And then we had Josh Gordon re-signing with the Seattle Seahawks.
Yep. Off basically reinstatement for the 27th time, but we're just gonna have to see how he does over there. And then we ended up shifting over to NBA, where the Rockets did end up getting the best of the Thunder. Chris Paul, played his heart out, really left it all out there. I think he should have been the one taking that last shot.
Honestly, I want to see the guy back in OKC next season.
You do?
I love it.
Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah, I mean, definitely was able to work with that young core.
Yep.
It's gonna be tough to. It's definitely going to be tough.
He's going to have a revenge season next year.
Yeah.
If we thought this was the revenge season.
He's in his late 30s now.
If we thought this was the revenge season, I can't imagine the feel that guy is going to have in him after that ending in Game 7.
Noted. We'll have to wait and see.
Yep.
Also,
we got a year to wait.
also in the NBA, we had Steve Nash going to the Brooklyn Nets. It's either gonna be a bang or a bust. We're gonna have to really wait and see. Is KD and Kyrie's pick for coach gonna be the guy, or is it gonna just go up in flames?
It's crazy. It's crazy when you say Steve Nash to the Brooklyn Nets. It almost sounds like a player because it's such a big name.
Yeah,
such a big name.
Obviously he was a player and a Hall of Fame one at that.
We'll see.
It's definitely gonna be interesting to see how that goes. And then we also just briefly kind of went over Celtics Raptors. The fact that Jaylen Brown just couldn't block OG, but we're gonna have to. But let's see. Let's hope they make it up. Let's hope it's over in 5 and it's on to the next one.
Let's hope.
Let's hope for the best. Then we went over to Major League Baseball. Minor League Baseball is is basically changing forever. Rob Manfred botched another one, and this is only going to end up hurting the game for baseball. Young kids and fans are going to end up losing out on a lot of teams, which is very detrimental and sad for the game. I hope that these teams can carry on in their own individual ways, but without the funding, it's going to definitely be tough.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Then we went into pitching legend Tom Seaver, unfortunately passing away. Amazing, illustrious career. One of the all-time greats. Rest in peace to one of the best pitchers ever. Then we talked about the Yankees and Rays handing down suspensions for a skirmish that happened at the end of one of the games. It's Chapman ended up getting 3. The managers ended up getting 1. Basically, the suspensions were more for COVID protocol than for anything that really happened. So the Chapman 3 game might have been for more stuff on the field, but the things for Aaron Boone and Cash were more just kind of like, hey, keep your players in line. So gonna have to watch that, see if anything happens in that field. And then we kind of ended things off by talking about NCAA and the fact that University of Oklahoma is going to be having their games pay-per-view.
And we certainly don't like the idea of pay-per-view college football.
No, we
down to the wire.
No, we do not. And then we kind of went back to NFL and we're talking about how do we think the Pats and how do we think the Buccaneers are going to do.
We made some very bold predictions, especially when it comes to the Buccaneers.
Yeah, Carter has them going 15-1.
Not this year, next year.
All right, good. Thank you for the clarification.
Yes.
With a 44-year-old quarterback. All right, I think that's all the time we have. It is currently 7:58. We're gonna let you guys. We're gonna get off a little early, but I'm Brian Costa.
I'm Carter Adams.
And this
Thanks
has been
for
down
watching.
the wire. We'll